Hello, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you. It's been a wonderful new year. We started beautifully, and today we will learn a completely different aspect of how the future of world is changing and what are the skills we require for it. Let's take a moment to understand Kurt Levin's change curve. So there are three aspects in this. So one is, how are we learning to unfreeze moments? How are we learning to change and adapt to these new moments that hit us? And how are we freezing as individuals after the learning has happened? And this is exactly what COVID taught us. So when we look at the response that we've had post-COVID, we have learned not only to survive, but in a lot of ways, we've learned to thrive as well. Take a step back and understand the evolution of mankind. We started as Homo habilis several billions of years ago and transformed ourselves into digital natives over these years. And what a journey, exciting journey it has been. And I'm sure Kurt Levin's curves applied there too. So we unfroze our learning, we changed ourselves in terms of what we wanted to learn, we adapted, and we learned something, and we've become what we are today. So all I'm trying to say is the world is evolving continuously, and the human brain is adapting to learn and survive and thrive all the changes that's hitting us. Take a look at organizations, right? Organizations have adapted to whatever has happened through COVID. They've started marching ahead, looking ahead, and not even thinking for a moment about what hit us, right? So we've taken those lessons, we've wrapped ourselves up beautifully, and we are taking a path to the future. How has the recovery post-COVID been? Certainly not elastic from whatever we are observing. What has happened though is the access to learning, and especially digital access to learning, has improved so much for individuals, for teams, and for the organizations. Is there one possible future? That's been a question that's been running on my mind for several months now. And if it's not one possible future, then what are the alternatives that we have? For certain, we are going to have shifts and digital inflections in the next decades. We are and we have to be nimble, and we will continuously learn to adapt. Are we going to be looking at a meta universe perhaps in the future, and meta universe as a reality, everything becoming virtual? More machines, this is the future for sure. And so what is the symbiotic relationship between man and machines that we need to consider? Roles are changing in every industry, in every field. There are multiplicity of roles that are coming in, and therefore role incumbents will also have to shift the skills required to these adapting roles. There's certainly a need for a more humane world, which means humane skills such as empathy and compassion will hold fort despite the world getting more and more artificially intelligent and more robotized. The biggest shift that I can see in the future is the learning onus that squarely rests on the individual learner. Several research papers have pointed us to the roles of the future. And a few of these roles seem very exciting. One is that of a data detective. I mean, come on. Did we even imagine a world where we thought data would be sacrosanct in terms of the quantum of data that hits us every day? And that data will really steer individuals, teams, and organizations. And imagine a role as that of a data detective. The second role that I read about was that of a personal data manager. Well, I've lived in an era where personal investment bankers were available, but look at personal data managers, virtual architects, something to really think about. Companion for the aged, Yes, I mean, we are getting into a society that is going to have more and more aged people. And, the reality of a specific or a separate role who will act as companions for the aged, awesome. And maybe that role will require a lot of empathetic and compassionate skills. That's what came to my mind. AI specialists, we know that already. UX designers, of course, there is a need. Beyond Earth pilots, amazing. I mean, we thought of flying within Earth, but look at a situation where space pilots are going to be the need in the next few years. Wellness experts, this trend we are already seeing, the need for health, mental wellness, holistic wellness, all of this is coming into the foray as we are experiencing situation post-COVID. What are two major observations? Two forms of intelligence seem to be evolving. The first one is artificial intelligence, where it has taken over our life and it is touching all aspects of our life, where logic and the brain is pretty involved. And on the other end of the spectrum, we are observing emotional intelligence ruling the roost, especially in the recent times of COVID, like never before. Emotions and everything related to the heart. So here is humankind wanting to learn technology skills on one end, and there is a strong need for learning the humane skills such as emotional intelligence on the other end. We lived in a world where trust was more a value. You definitely encouraged, you thought about building trusted relationships. But imagine a world that we are living now where trust is not only a value, and it is more a skill that leaders need to be consciously developing themselves in. Let's take an example. In the post-COVID world, everything is virtual. Mostly we've adopted to hybrid methods of working. We work from home. There are our teams who are working remotely, and you are a leader who needs to govern and manage these remote teams. What better skill other than trust is required for such virtual team management? So we are seeing trust not only as a value, but as a skill required for leaders in the years to come. Now, this brings us to the next question in terms of, while all these shifts around the future of work, we have new roles emerging, we have skills required for the new roles that we need to be contemplating, what are some of the most common skills needed in the workplace? I think I've bucketed them into 7, 5 that you can see here, and maybe a couple more that will come. So the first one is business skills. All of us are aware of it. The second is what I call interpersonal or leadership skills. We are aware of this as well. The third is something that has not taken attention away from us, but it has not been given enough attention to, which is the learning skills. Fourth is around the tools required for us to work very effectively. And fifth are the technical technology skills that are going to steer us into the future. Let's take a deeper look at what are some of the business skills that we will need. We saw, during COVID and post-COVID, the need for business continuity emerging as a very important aspect for every leader and every organization. And with business continuity becoming so important, none of us were bereft of the fact that we needed to align to whatever was decided by the business, adapt and move on quickly, which meant we had to also understand business continuity process skills. The second one was a lot of things post-COVID changed, right? Where we were battling whether strategy is going to drive direction or is direction going to drive strategy. What this told us was 2 things. One is strategic agility that is very important for organizations. And 2, alignment of employees to the strategic agility adopted by organizations. and we had to necessarily adapt as quickly as we could. The third one was more around decision making and risk mitigation. While artificial intelligence definitely gives us tremendous amount of insight into our patterns, our thought patterns, big data is driving us in a very different way. And while we had both of those, the reality became we had to take decisions with as little data and risk taking ability, believing that the risk would pay off in the business, was what really evolved in the business space. Going forward, however, there's going to be a stronger dependency on data for decisions and for managing risk. On the second segment, we saw interpersonal and leadership skills evolving beautifully. Adaptive skills, there was no second thought to it. Remote governance with plenty of workers working from homes and across locations, even globally, it became so important to understand what are the governance mechanisms leaders needed to make sure that teams were performing effectively. But the other skill that evolved as I was observing in several meetings that I was part of was the understanding of body language in a virtual space. So prior to COVID, we were all in the workplace, we were seeing each other, we were able to understand our body languages and tweak our responses. Today, we are living virtually. Sometimes we are on video, sometimes we are not. So how are you able to understand the tone of the voice, the body language that is shaping the workforce in a virtual world? The third one is, of course, emotional intelligence. What are you sensing more than seeing at the other end of the spectrum? Are you empathetic and compassionate to the many, many changes people are facing and trying to tackle in your workforce? The third segment is about learning skills. We always knew that continuous learning is here to stay. But did we really think about what we needed to learn, how much we needed to learn, and how do we prioritize it? So, metacognition, in terms of observational skills, learning how to learn is going to be the future need and a potential skill for employees. Second is you are being bombarded with several digital courses. How are you going to prioritize what you want to learn and what has to be learned? The third one is observation. Are you a keen observer of the many things and shifts that are happening around you? And how much of that are you translating into effective experiences for you at work? The fourth segment of skills required will be the tools that will help you to effectively work. All of your remote working tools, understanding and using LMS, for example. So earlier, every employee knew that there was a learning management system in the organization. Today, if you have to upskill or cross skill yourself, not only knowing that an LMS exists, but you need to understand how that learning management system works, how the courses are curated, how easy it is to find a particular course, how to use the search option, and billions of other things that you need to understand for you to kind of really get effective at pulling out the right learning for yourself. The third set would be operational tools, anything that helps you in operation. The fourth one will be new age communication. So if you look at meetings, they are virtual. If you're looking at conversations, they have become virtual. So how are you going to communicate? Use the social media effectively or use social learning skills within your organization. And what are the social learning tools or social learning platforms your organization has? Have you even considered those aspects? And finally, we have the technical skills, the emerging technologies that's here to stay. And we better start understanding that it is primary now and not anymore optional for us to be hands-on in several of these emerging technologies because the world is getting more and more digitalized. So to summarize, we need to have a good flair for business skills, the leadership skills, especially for managing remote workforces. We need to understand learning and how to learn. We need to understand the tools that will help us perform effectively. And fifth, we need to really be cognizant about the technical and technology skills that are reshaping the world. So, from a spectrum of AI to the other end of the spectrum of EI, many skills are changing, and there is a plethora of skills available for you to choose from, plethora of learning available for you to choose from to learn. But more than anything, I think as a humankind, if we have to really survive what's hitting us, we need to have two additional buckets of skills. And the first one is self care, and the second one is family skills, relationship skills. Why am I even saying this? We are building trusted relationships not only at the workplace, but it will become increasingly important for you to build trusted relationships even at home. You need to become cognizant about stress and the way it is impacting not only you who's working from home, but people around you. How are you managing those stress activators or stress? And how are you going to really respond to what is hitting not only you, but people around you, your children, your parents, your in laws, your family? The third one is being happy. You know, in times of COVID, we suddenly realized we don't need so much material comforts as much as we imagined. There was a certain sense of gratitude that we were alive, and there was a certain sense of comfort in the belief that we can all have Spartan lives and still be happy. And happiness is going to be an important skill in the future. Coping skills. We believe we have circumvented COVID, or we have, with the vaccine coming in, we have a fair chance of survival in the world. But honestly, how are we coping to the post implications of COVID with job losses? So, what are some of the coping skills that we need to be familiarized with? And what are the coping skills that we need to really give our employees that will help them have a very healthy, peaceful life? And finally, family skills. You know, very often we hesitate to seek help, to ask for help. And in the current scenario, I think, and in the future, if hybrid working is going to remain a reality, if remote working, which possibly will remain a reality, how are we seeking help to make sure that we have a fine balance of our work deliverables and things that are continuously popping up at home? How are we understanding the social fabric of the society that is changing and learning to accept the different interfaces that is hitting us? And finally, are we spacing out attention? When I say this, are we paying attention to everything that comes our way? Or have we also learned how to prioritize areas which need more attention vis-a-vis the rest? So, to summarize, I do see that the world will shift, will become more complex, and we have to survive, not only survive, but thrive. But while you think of the future, what are you really doing to upskill yourself, whether it is aspects of business skills that you need to comprehend, whether they are aspects of interpersonal leadership skills, learning skills, tools required for survival, technical skills, technology skills, self-care, and family skills. I do hope we will all pay attention to the several disruptions and inflections hitting us every day, and we are cognizant and we start looking to a future which is filled with learning, with a plethora of choices. Have a great new year and set aside time for hitting the pause button on reflecting on what we just saw. Thank you.